For example, it was a very interesting, I remember this student who we had. Every day she would come for the class. She had this red couch that she would come and sit. Okay, and often we would ask her questions about her home and family and shooting of the film and the story and all that, and she seemed very, very stressed about something. The film that she made was a film on how parents put pressure on children on doing well in academics. Okay, that was her story, and that was her own story. Also, she interestingly used her own family members to do the acting. So I think the mother who puts a lot of pressure on her was the mother who was acting in her film. So a lot of their concerns are these, right? It could be gender concerns, it could be a lot of the bullying that they face in schools, identity related questions are there, the pressure of being something while they want to be something else, or they want to do something else. So all these, and to the extent that there have been people, when we ask them, we want to make a film on how our parents tell us that we have to study engineering or medical, but I want to be an artist or I want to be a singer. So if we ask them that, what will you do? How will you convince your parents? What will you do? We've had some very sort of scary comments where they have said, we will try and we will try to convince them. Then if they don't, we always have the option of taking our life. When COVID happened, all of us were sort of stuck in the house, and we said, do you think it's possible? We all asked ourselves whether it's possible to actually do this mentoring online, because we were so used to doing it offline and with children around us. And so we said, let's challenge ourselves and do that. So we started, we created some interesting workshops which were 5-day long, 6-day long, 10-day long. Also, we realized the children were stuck in their homes. I had a 16-year-old who was inside the house, and I knew that they were only on the phone. So we thought, what better way than to get them to use that technology that they have in a more meaningful way, and also we can engage with them. So we developed these programs, one of them which is called Let's Make Films, another which is called Soundly, which is on podcasting, and another one which is on journalism called Newsworthy. So all these 3 programs were developed, so to say, during that time. We started doing online workshops with children and students. We got very good responses from there. So suddenly all this content was with us, and some very nice short films were being made. So we said, what should we do with it? Because also parents and children want to see it somewhere. So we of course started the YouTube channel, but we said, can we do an online film festival? So that's how 4 years ago Footprint as a festival started.
With his report card revealing failures in science and math. Disappointing.
Footprint is a platform, it's a space which has been created for, I'd say, teenagers and young adults to create and make films and other digital content, and to be able to showcase it to the rest of the world. Footprint, of course, has a festival which happens every year, and now Footprint is also going to happen in several other cities. So many versions of Footprint will happen through the year. But Footprint also offers a mentoring space, because it is for primarily teenagers in schools and under 19, people who are under 19 years of age, giving them some mentoring along the lines of how to tell stories, because at the end it's the storytelling which is the most important.
I made BU, which is basically about a girl who gets demotivated by her society because she's...
Footprint primarily, I think, is a space which nurtures what young people have to What are they thinking? What are they seeing around themselves, in the world around themselves? What are their perspectives? And it's a space for adults to actually see what they have to say. Being a broadcast journalist and having made films, and of course also several years ago I set up another film archive and a film festival. This is my domain of work, right? So this is what I would say I understand best. Of course, there's no sort of stopping of learning in this field, but to some extent I have an understanding of this. Also, I've been working in education for some time, which has been primarily around getting alternative ways of learning, right? Other than your chalk and talk and books, we learn in so many different ways, and the visual medium itself is such a powerful way to learn, to have discussions. Imagine when you watch a film on a certain issue and then you have a dialogue, chances are you will not forget it, but if someone has to read pages of something in a book, it will not probably register. Or if you do theatre, right, of an incident in history, children remember it much better. So I've been working in this field for some time, and we had been mentoring children in schools and colleges, students in schools and colleges on digital storytelling. Print is a space for young people to share their perspectives, right, about the world that they see, how they see it, what are their concerns, what are their views, because it's quite different from the way adults see the world around us. Many experiences, each experience is different. I think one of my favorite is Priyanjana and I went to the Sundarbans. There was a very driven principal there. I was surprised that he even agreed to do a filmmaking workshop, but he was very keen, and I think one of his concerns was also that his children are all the time, his grade 7, 8, 9, 10 children are constantly on the phone. So what are they doing? And they seem to have a world of their own in their phone, which I felt like when my son was growing up, I wasn't very keen on knowing what that world was. But of course, as a parent or as a caregiver or as schools, you want to make sure your children are safe, right? And they're in the right company or doing the right things. So Sundarbans is special because it changed, I think. I knew about Sundarbans, but I had no idea of how difficult life is for people there. And these children walk hours to come to school. They of course had smartphones, so that made it easier. But why I'm sharing about Sundarbans is those 6 days we were in that school, we stayed in that school, and it sort of changes your perspective about life, and you feel highly privileged of what you have. And so they all tried to make films on their ecosystem, what Sundarbans is all about. So there was one boy who wanted to make a film on child labor. So there are a lot of children who work in Sundarbans, right? And he was very confident that he would be able to make a documentary film. So we said, fine, okay. He went, he said he knew which child he's going to interview. On the day of the shoot, nobody was willing to speak. Of course, nobody will be willing to do a documentary on child labor because there's so many children working there. Children will also be not willing to speak. People who employ them will of course not be willing to speak. So the whole day, so they all went out for their shoots, and the whole day he was trying to get his, so to say, protagonist, and didn't manage. It was more than half a day was over. We spoke to him on the phone. We said, what's happening? He said, nah, amar to hocche na, because nobody is willing to speak. So I said, what will you do? And this is exactly what I think, filmmaking or any of this is about, is problem solving, right? You decide, you figured out everything, but on the day of the shoot, it's not happening. You don't have your people, okay? So we said, what will you do? He said, I'm going to do a fiction story. I said, okay. Have you written your story? He said, I'm writing it. So he wrote it. And he had some 6-7 people he required in that story. I said, where will you get? Again, he went searching for who's going to act for him. Again, he realized that to have a cast of 6-7, get them prepared to say the dialogue, decide his whole film, was not going to happen. So, and that was the day he had to shoot. If he didn't shoot that day, we didn't have time for him to finish editing, and completing the project had to be completed in 6 days. So he finally wrote a shorter script, and he managed to get, so there were 2 of them making films. So the other boy with him, he became the actor, and he became this boy who works in a welding shop, okay? And he shot it in a way where he didn't need other people, right? And he was able to use what we had taught in the film classes on how do you shoot, how do you use different types of shot, how do you tell the story visually. You don't need, all the time you don't need lots of characters or dialogues or things like that. It's a visual medium. Kore, he made this wonderful film, very short film that he made on child labor. So, I mean, there are many such. Each of the children who made, there was a girl in another school that we went to. She had a story on menstrual hygiene. Okay. She wrote her story, her script was there. She had spoken to her teachers who were going to act, because her story was about, the plot was in the school and she needed a teacher, right? And the teacher in the school backed out. Can you believe it? Teacher didn't want to be part of a story which was about menstrual hygiene. So see how taboo the topic itself is. In a school, if teachers are not willing to support in this. So we said, doesn't matter. She said, Amat to hobe ina film. We said, doesn't matter. Let's see who is willing to do it. And then she had to find, and she did this wonderful film. And I think that's very empowering for her, and it's not just about the film that she made. The film turned out really well, but the fact that this journey of how taboo a topic like menstrual hygiene is, and how it becomes even more important to make that story. I also feel that schools should be more encouraging and need to look at these as more co-curricular. At one time it used to be SUPW or whatever. Then they used to say extracurricular. I feel these are co-curricular subjects, and you can use these to also teach subjects. So you can use films to teach history, you can science, just about languages. You can use any of these mediums to teach. So they can also be a tool. You can use them as a tool, but you can also teach these so that children have ways to express themselves other than just say writing. Of course, writing is a skill you should learn. You learn how to speak, you learn how to read, you learn how to write. But this is visual writing, right? And this is a very useful skill, I feel. And schools should take it up more seriously. For example, in CBSE, I know media studies exists, but schools don't offer these. Most of our schools still offer, science, humanities, and commerce. But combination of subjects, why can I not study science and want to make films? There's as much science in making films. So I feel schools should more actively offer these combinations. I feel young people want to opt for many of these. These are all professions which are viable. They are economically very, very viable. I think you can make lots of money if you're a good storyteller. So we need to open up these options. So I feel it's a very useful skill to learn. I think learning how to tell stories. We tell stories as teachers, we tell stories as filmmakers, we tell stories as politicians. In any field you have to tell a story. So if you learn how to tell a good story, it's a great skill to learn.